Hi, I'm Valerie Reid, and today I have one short story and several short poems to read to you. The theme they share will be a parent. The short story is by Pete Hamill from this book, The Christmas Kid. I read this story to you back in January. And just as a reminder, Pete Hamill was born in 1935 and he died a few years ago. He was a novelist, a newspaper editor, essayist, screenwriter, short story writer. He wrote hundreds of short stories, and he was a beloved icon of New York City. This story is called 6/6/44, like on the calendar, June 6, 1944, D-Day. Two things to keep in mind. He refers to LCVs. Those are lightweight combat vehicles. Also, the plot goes between the present and the past. And it's done here in italics for the past. But since you can't see that, I will have to alert you that we're in the past. So here is 6/6/44 by Pete Hamill. Drum and Keegan, old now, steel-haired, their skins freckled, shirts too tight, sat together in the warm June sunshine on a bench across from the playground. Prospect Park smelled of new mown grass. There was no breeze. Keegan smoked a cigarette and glanced at the newspaper on his knee. Drum watched young mothers pushing children on swings. I don't even give a hill of beans what's in the paper, Keegan was saying. I carry it around because you gotta have something to do. Or sit on. Old guy sits on a park bench nowadays, they think you're a degenerate. I know what you mean. But look at this stuff, he tapped the newspaper. Nicaragua, El Salvador, we're mining harbors in a country we ain't at war with, Harry. We paid all these El Crepos, the Contras, to fight for us. These people kill nuns, Harry. I don't get it anymore, Harry. Drum smiled. It's no concern of ours anymore, Charlie. Yeah, well, we didn't pull crap like this when I was a kid, when you was a kid. Drum leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. That woman in the dungarees with the yellow blouse remind you of Helen, doesn't she? Keegan looked at Drum. I thought you weren't going to talk about her anymore. I'm not talking about her. I'm just saying that woman looks like her, a statement of fact. Look at me. You see a tear? You see me upset? No, but I don't want to neither. Every time you talk about Helen, you get weepy. I was married to her for 32 years, Charlie. Keegan opened the newspaper. Hey, look at this. 40 years. The anniversary, 40 years since D-Day. Can you believe it? Yeah. Geez, I forgot, Harry. You was there, right? Drum shrugged and stood up. Let's take a walk. Now we're in the past. They loaded us on LCVs in the dark, 13 miles out. The waves rising and falling, bazookas and TNT piled on the deck, and all of us with full field packs, knowing everything came to this moment. This night, this day in the English Channel, all the training, the convoy across the Atlantic, the boredom and the pubs and women of England. I wrote Helen 121 letters from England alone, crazy letters, mad, nutty kid letters, the words just pouring out of me. Nothing about the war, nothing about Nazis or democracy or freedom or any of that, just me, crazy for her, crazy to be with her, crazy to come back alive, crazy to have kids with her, a house with her, crazy to live a life with her. And in the LCV, jammed in with Smitty and Ralph and Cappy and Max, that's all I thought about. If I could think about Helen, her face, her hair, the way she laughed, the smell of her in the park in summer, then I wouldn't have to think about what was on the other side of the channel. I dozed and thought about her. I squatted there and thought about her. I even thought of her as we rose and fell and moved through the waves, and the big guns pounded the shores. Back in the present. They came over a rise and looked down at the broad green sward of the meadow. The Parks Department had erected metal fences for ball players, and Drum hated them. Drum wanted the world to stay the same for all of his life. I see those fences, he said. I want to blow them up. They put you in the can for that, Keegan said, laughing in his wheezy way, and I'm too old to come visit you. But do you blame me? Everything's changed, Harry. You can stand here and pray for a week. You ain't gonna see a trolley car. You ain't gonna go to Ebbets Field, and you ain't gonna go to Luna Park. I know. Passed. I never forgot the noise. The guns of the Texas and the engines of the assault craft, and planes bombing and guys yelling with megaphones from one boat to another. The sky went from black to gray. Miller, the farm kid from South Carolina, got up and lurched to the side of the LCV and vomited over the side, and the wind blew it all around, and then another guy was puking, and then dozens of them, and next to me, Max was stiff against the steel bulkhead, his teeth chattering, and all of us were wondering who would live and who would die. The boat rose on the crest of a wave, and I could see LCVs everywhere, and right ahead of us was Omaha Beach. They strolled down to the marsh that used to be the Swan Lake. Keegan dropped the newspaper in a trash can. There were ugly chunks of dirty concrete where the boathouse used to be. There was a waterfall over there, Drum said. Remember? And paddle boats shaped like swans, and a guy selling Cracker Jacks, and everybody walking across the park to the ball games. Yeah, and up there past the waterfall there was a stream. Cleanest water I ever seen. Devil's Cave was next to the stream. On the left, Keegan said. I used to hide there when it rained. He looked at Drum, who was staring out at the dead lake. It was nice, sitting there in the rain. It was. And then it was day, and we were 1,000 yards from shore, and the coxswain's eyes were panicky, and the lieutenant unsure of where he was, looking at his map, which was soaking wet, and peering out over the top and moving his mouth without making words. I could see the beach, 2 tanks with smoke pouring out of them, the wind blowing the smoke flat, and a church steeple. And then the high, dull thump of explosives got sharper, splitting the air. And then I saw tracers coming from the cliffs and rows of bundles on the beach. There were huge poles rising from the water with contact mines hanging from them like pie plates, and huge logs cantilevered out of the sand, and Belgian gates, these huge steel frame doors leading to nowhere. And we were getting closer, and bullets were caroming off the steel bulkheads, and we were closer. And then I saw the bundles on the beach again, and they weren't bundles, they were men. The men of the first wave, and the second wave, and the third. And 2 tanks were burning, and there was no artillery, and we were closer. And the coxswain was screaming at the lieutenant, and then there was a grinding sound, and the engines idled. And then the ramp was lowered, and waves pouring into the LCV, and we were moving into the water. It was over our heads. I saw Cappy go under, and Ralph thrashing in the water, and then Miller's head exploded, and there was blood and bone and tissue all over us, and then Robert shoved him out ahead of us into the water, and then it was my turn, and I said, Helen. I said, Helen. I said, Helen. 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 They left the park at 11th Avenue. Come on over later, eat something, Harry, Keegan said. I don't like it that you're living alone. You're what, 60? That's a young guy nowadays, Harry. You should. I'll see you tomorrow, Charlie. I lay behind 2 bodies while the machine guns hammered. I could see 2 battleships and a couple of cruisers, and someone was screaming off to the left. And mortars exploded in the sand, and there was blood on my face and hands and my carbine, and none of it was mine. The noise was ferocious. Shells screaming in from the Texas, metal and rocks breaking and splintering, rifle fire and machine guns, hammering and mortars, and my face in the sand. And then I turned and saw 2 cans racing in near the shore, unloading their 5-inchers, and a whumping sound and more screaming. And one of the guys I was huddled behind was whimpering. And then someone shouted that we better get up or we'd die on the damned beach. And I waited and then got up and started to run. And then I was down and I could see planes overhead and my leg burning. And when I tried to move, I couldn't. And I looked at the sky again, and I thought, that's it. It's over. I won. That's my war. I thought, that's it, Helen. I thought it's June 6, 1944, 6/6/44, and I just got my ticket home. And now, these poems are all by 2 Illinois men. One is Vachel Lindsay, who was born and raised in Springfield, Illinois, the city associated with Abraham Lincoln, where Abraham Lincoln lived with his family. His house is still there, his wife, his children. He lived there from 1844 until 1861 when he became president, and he's also buried there. And this is called Abraham Lincoln Walks at Midnight. Now, Vachel Lindsay was born in 1874, and he died at the age of 52 in 1931. So the war that he knew of was World War I, the war to end all wars. At least that's what people hoped and people actually thought. Abraham Lincoln Walks at Midnight by Vachel Lindsay. It is portentous and a thing of state that here at midnight in our little town, a mourning figure walks and will not rest near the old courthouse, pacing up and down. Or by his homestead or in shadowed yards, he lingers where his children used to play. Or through the market on the well-worn stones, he stalks until the dawn stars burn away. A bronzed, lank man, his suit of ancient black, a famous high-top hat and plain worn shawl make him the quaint, great figure that men love, the prairie lawyer, master of us all. He cannot sleep upon his hillside now. He is among us, as in times before. And we who toss and lie awake for long breathe deep and start to see him pass the door. His head is bowed. He thinks on men and kings. Yea, when the sick world cries, how can he sleep? Too many peasants fight, they know not why. Too many homesteads in black terror weep. The sins of all the warlords burn his heart. He sees the dreadnoughts scouring every main. He carries on his shawl-wrapped shoulders now the bitterness, the folly, and pain. He cannot rest until a spirit dawn shall come, the shining hope of Europe free, the league of sober folk, the workers' earth, bringing long peace to cornland, alp, and sea. It breaks his heart that kings must murder still, that all his hours of travail here for men seem yet in vain. And who will bring white peace, that he may sleep upon his hill again? And Vachel Lindsay also wrote Why I Voted the Socialist Ticket. Remember, if he died in 1931, he voted the socialist ticket a long time ago. I am unjust, but I can strive for justice. My life's unkind, but I can vote for kindness. I, the unloving, say life should be lovely. I that am blind, cry out against my blindness. Man is a curious brute. He pets his fancies, fighting mankind to win sweet luxury. So he will be, though law be clear as crystal, though all men plan to live in harmony. Come, Let us vote against our human nature, crying to God in all the polling places to heal our everlasting sinfulness and make us sages with transfigured faces. And now, 2 poems by Carl Sandburg. Carl Sandburg was born in Galesburg, Illinois, only 4 years after Vachel Lindsay, but he lived until 1967, so he knew more than just World War I. He knew World War II, he knew Korea, he even knew Vietnam. And his poem is called Wars. In the old wars, drum of hoofs and the beat of shod feet. In the new wars, hum of motors and the tread of rubber tires. In the wars to come, silent wheels and whir of rods not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. In the old wars, clutches of short swords and jabs into faces with spears. In the new wars, long-range guns and smashed walls, guns running a spit of metal, and men falling in 10s and 20s. In the wars to come, new silent deaths, new silent hurlers not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. In the old wars, kings quarreling and thousands of men following. In the new wars, kings quarreling and millions of men following. In the wars to come, kings kicked under the dust and millions of men following great causes not yet dreamed out in the heads of men. And finally, just to end it on a kind of a more a funnier note, is elephants are different to different people, but the theme is still the same, and it is by Carl Sandburg. Wilson and Pilser and Snack stood before the zoo elephant. Wilson said, "What is its name? Is it from Asia or Africa? Who feeds it? Is it a he or a she? How old is it? Do they have twins? How much does it cost to feed? How much does it weigh? If it dies, how much will another one cost? If it dies, what will they use the bones, the fat, and the hide for? What use is it besides to look at?" Pilser didn't have any questions. He was murmuring to himself, "It's a house by itself, walls and windows. The ears come from tall cornfields, by God. The architect of those legs was a workman, by God. He stands like a bridge out across deep water. The face is sad, and the eyes are kind. I know elephants are good to babies." Snack looked up and down and at last said to himself, "He's a tough son of a gun outside, and I'll bet he's got a strong heart. I'll bet he's strong as a copper-riveted boiler inside." They didn't put up any arguments. They didn't throw anything in each other's faces. 3 men saw the elephant 3 ways and let it go at that. They didn't spoil a sunny Sunday afternoon. Sunday comes only once a week, they told each other. Thanks for listening.